So the biggest problem I hear from clients when it comes to documents and employee compliance happens years later. It happens 5 or 6 years later when they get an inquiry from, let's say, Department of Labor, or it could be a class action lawsuit to produce employment records, things such as payroll records, timekeeping records, um, HR information, vacation. It could be how much paid vacation they had. And the issue is many times the person that created these systems and kept the records 5 years ago is no longer with the company. So what happens is the new person has their own system of doing things. They use different tools. Like maybe the person 5 years ago kept records of the time off on pieces of paper, and now the new person does it in Excel. So they have no idea where the old records are. They can't produce them, they can't find them. And the company is in trouble because they can't produce the records that they're required to produce. And law states that you have to keep many of these records for at least 7 years. So they're in a heap of trouble. So maybe it's not all seven, but it could be five. I've seen a lot with 5 or 6. It could be that Department of Labor comes knocking and they want to see time records because an employee is challenging, saying that, oh, I used to work at Joe's Auto Body for 2 years, and I used to work 60 hours a week, and they never paid me overtime. So now the company has to produce time records to show that the employee didn't work 60 hours a week, or if they did work 60 hours a week, that they were paid overtime for those overtime hours. For example, for a workers' comp audit, usually that doesn't take 7 years. Usually those happen more frequently, usually every year or two. So what they want is they want payroll records specifically, and they want to verify the classification of what that employee was doing so that they could apply the different rates that they have based upon the risk levels of the person getting injured on the job. And then based upon their hours, they charge a fee or an insurance premium for that employee. So they could always request records after the fact. Let's say an employee puts in a workers' comp claim, and it's then they want to go back many years to see what the employee actually worked and how much they earned and what their job classification is. So it's entirely possible. It could be unemployment department could be asking, what wages the person had, when they worked, how many hours. You might need to know that for unemployment purposes. A lot of times I see this, and it really hurts the employers, is on Spanish-speaking TV. The attorneys are out there asking the Spanish-speaking people, do you work more than 40 hours? Are you not getting paid overtime? Call us. We'll help you collect thousands from your employer. So what they do is they get one employee that calls them, and then they get the one employee to bring in 2 or 3 other employees from the company, and they create a class action lawsuit, and then they sue the employer for all these employees, and then the employer has to produce all these records from years past and be able to dispute the claim or justify that they don't owe anything. So a lot of times they don't have the proper records. They can't find the proper records. And there's another big issue that happens. Sometimes because they're working in separate systems, they might have one system for timekeeping, one system for HR, one system for payroll, and some of it could be manual filing cabinets, that the information in the systems don't match up. So, for example, it might show that the termination date in one system was January 23rd, but in another system, it may show it's March 6th. So which one's right? And then what if they don't have accurate payroll records? What if they don't have timekeeping records that match what the employee was paid for the pay period? Let's say the employee worked 43.13 hours, but they only got paid for 41 hours on their paycheck. Now, how do they explain that? So by having separate systems with separate information in it, not only is it hard to locate it, but it's also a problem that if it has different information, which is the right information? So the solution for small and medium-sized businesses now is the same solution that big companies have been able to afford and use for years. So big companies have a single source of truth. They have one system that their HR department operates in. And in that one system, they keep track of things such as HR, all the employment records, the hiring records, all the W-4s, the I-9s. They keep track of all the benefit enrollment forms. They keep track of all the documents that the employee has. They also have things such as the payroll in the one system. So they have one employee record. It keeps track of HR, employee compliance, payroll, timekeeping, everything in one place. And because it's a structured system, anyone could go into it, even if it's 5 years later and the person that's going into it isn't the one that put the information in. Because it's structured, it's easy to locate everything. Everything belongs in a specific spot, but it's all in one place, so they know exactly where to look. They can go and retrieve the information. So now the best thing is that small and medium-sized companies could take advantage of the same type of single source of truth tool. They can use the same single software for all this, and it's cost effective. So what do I mean by cost effective? Even a 5-employee company can use these tools, and the cost of it is probably what they're paying right now just for payroll. So why not have a single source of truth, one system for everything, so they don't have any skeletons in the closet years later? So one of the biggest problems companies face is that when they receive a letter or an inquiry, uh, it could be from 5 years ago for a terminated employee. So they're looking for time records, payroll records, hire date. They want all the information, what job that person held. They want all the information for that person. So let's say 5 years ago, Betty worked for the company and she was the office manager, and she kept all the records. She kept and got all the W-4s and the I-9s, and she got and kept all the payroll records somewhere else in some other system. And maybe she had a mechanical time clock with those punch cards, you put in cling, cling, and she had piles of time cards with rubber bands around them. And maybe that was the system. But now, fast forward 5 years, and Betty no longer works for the company. Now, Tom works for the company, and maybe 2 other people work for the company between Betty and Tom. But now Tom works for the company, and the way he does things is different. Maybe he keeps track of vacation records in Excel, whereas Betty kept vacation records on a sheet of paper manually. Maybe they use a different payroll system now, and maybe they have an electronic time clock now or something with a different piece of software and a different system. So the problem is Tom has no idea how to find these records. He has no idea where these pieces of paper are. If Betty did keep anything electronically on the computer, he has no idea which folder it's in on the computer, on the server, if it even exists, if it's still there. And even if he was lucky enough to find it, would he be able to interpret it? Would he be able to read it? Would he be able to understand it? Probably not. So the real issue has to do with, do you want your person that works for you at your company to develop their own systems for employee compliance and for HR? Or do you want to use a structured system so that anybody can find the information even years later? Many small and medium-sized businesses are doing things partially correct. They're using a payroll provider, an outsourced payroll service for payroll, and that's good. But then as far as HR records go, they might still be doing that manually on paper. And as far as timekeeping records go, they might be using another software program to do that electronically. So there's many different payroll providers out there that offer a single source of truth, one system that could do all these things. But the big difference is, for a small or medium-sized business owner, you don't just want the software. You want the software, and you want someone to sort of set it up and do it for you and implement it and teach you how to use it. So you're not just looking for a do-it-yourself type of solution. You want a full service solution. So there are companies, local payroll companies out there that have the sophisticated software that's an all-in-one single source of truth software like we have. Um, and they will help you and talk with you and develop all the tools because they know they're doing it for thousands of companies. You've never even done it for one. You don't know what to do. They know how to do it. So they'll just do it for you, teach you how to use it. If you have a new person that comes in, they'll teach the new person how to use it. And this way you're covered, and even years later, you will be able to find things and produce records, and you won't have to worry about getting fines and penalties and stress, pressure, headaches, all those things.